Dynamite celebrated 300 episodes on Wednesday night and had a really strong show. Definitely better than that Boarfest on Friday night. Carried primarily by the matches, including an excellent main event between Kazuchika Okada and Kota Ibushi. Their first match in nearly 4 years. A return to form for Ibushi is what it was. And we had the return of Kenny Omega when it was over, coming out with a chair to make the save for his old partner. I saw where Conan on his podcast criticized AEW for not bringing Ibushi back last week to save Kenny Omega. That he should have been brought back directly in something with Omega, and they should have done a Golden Lovers reunion. You know, for someone with as much experience in a creative role as this guy has had, you would think he would be smarter than that. How did he not see where they were going with this? If he would have just waited 1 week. Like, it was pretty clear to me what they were doing when they brought Ibushi back. And look, when they brought Ibushi back on Collision, it was out of nowhere. It was completely out of left field. But it was pretty apparent what we were going to be getting on this 300th episode. Bringing Ibushi back for Omega to make the save. Omega making the save is what made the most sense, because Omega is the one that needs to be strong going into All In, because it's Kenny Omega's match at All In. It's not Ibushi's match. So having Ibushi come to make the save for Omega doesn't really make any sense. You wanted Kenny Omega to come back, because he's been off TV for a few weeks, to make the save for Ibushi, which is exactly what they did, and that's what they should have done, despite whatever Conan may have to say about it. But let's do a preview for the All In Texas card next weekend, and I will incorporate some of the key things that happened on Dynamite this week as we go along here. All In Texas takes place this Saturday, July 12th, from Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas. A very hot and humid Arlington, Texas. 93 degrees is projected to be the high temperature on Saturday. I cannot imagine they open the roof for this show with weather like that. Globe Life has a retractable roof. It should be closed. Unless you want to be bunched up with 20,000 sweaty wrestling fans, which sounds like an absolute nightmare. It will be their biggest North American show to date. Tony Khan told TMZ Sports that they have sold over $2.5 million worth of tickets, and the gate will likely end up being over $3 million when all is said and done. They've never even done $2 million before in the U.S., let alone $3 million. So it's already a big success for them, even though it will by no means be full. They will have well north of 20,000 fans in attendance. It starts at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, at the same time that NXT is running the Great American Bash. I've looked at that card for the Great American Bash. I'm not going to lie. That card looks like ass. I mean, they're not even trying. Literally just doing the show as a fuck you to AEW and putting in the bare minimum effort. I will be on my way home from the House of Glory show in Texas that morning, so I should be home before the pay-per-view starts, and we'll be live on YouTube for the full review when it's over. More matches may be added this week, so this may not be the complete card, but the key matches are all accounted for. And Jim Ross is hoping to be on the call for at least a couple of matches on the show. He is cancer-free now and was very much hoping to be there, so it'll be nice to hear his voice again for a match or two. On Collision last night, Claudio Castagnoli issued a challenge to the Ops to try to get back their trios titles at All In. And it has not yet been made official, nor did he say who he and Wheeler Yuta would be tagging with, because Pac has been out hurt. I don't know if he's healed up or not. I mean, that's a pretty gnarly ankle injury, and that only was a few months ago. So I'm not sure if he's cleared to come back yet or not. It could just be Pac returns. They could always trot out Gabe Kidd from New Japan as their partner, because he kind of had an alliance going there with Jon Moxley and the Death Riders for a bit. But they're going to be taking on Samoa Joe, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Katsuyori Shibata. The match is obviously going to happen, even though it's not official yet. And when it does, I do believe that Hook will cost the Ops those trios titles. I was wondering if Hook may end up being the surprise partner for Claudio and Yuta. I don't really think that makes sense, because if he's their partner and they win the title, I mean, I don't think Hook is joining the Death Riders, so I don't think he'll be the mystery partner, but I do think that he is going to cost them those titles. I think we're going to have new champions. We have men's and women's casino gauntlet matches. with the winners earning a future World Championship match. That's how they have phrased it. But last year, you were able to cash in at any time, and I am so sick to death of the cash in anytime shit. I just wish we could toss it into a volcano for a year and just take a breather from it for a little bit, but it is what it is. I assume the rules will be the same this year. This is the first time they're doing a women's one on this show, and only the second one ever for the ladies. Typically, there's up to 21 participants, but the match can end at any time, so first pinfall or submission wins the match. We're not getting 21 people out there for these. On the men's side, we know Mark Briscoe will enter at number 1, and MJF, with his win on Wednesday over Brody King, Anthony Bowens, and AR Fox, will enter at number 2. We also know now that Mystico is in, and I think that Mystico is going to play a role in making sure MJF does not win the Casino Gauntlet, especially after the angle they shot at MLW a couple weeks ago, where MJF came out and attacked Mystico again. That was the second time after he stole his mask at Grand Slam Mexico a few weeks ago. So I think Mystico will get a measure of revenge on him here that will prevent him from winning the Gauntlet. There's also usually a few surprises in there. I could see Switchblade Jay White being one of them. I would love to see an Eddie Kingston return here. I've been watching his training videos on Cesar Bonani's YouTube channel. He's been helping him with his training and rehab. And he looks like he could be back at any time. He was out, the injury happened in April, I think, of last year. And it was multiple surgeries because it was his ACL and he broke it. I mean, it was a horrendous injury when he got hurt. But he was expected to be out for a year, and now it's been over a year. So I feel like he could be back at any time. And I think it's going to happen here. That's who I'm going with to win the contract. I'm making a bold prediction here. He hasn't even been announced for the match, but Eddie Kingston returns and he wins the men's Casino Gauntlet. Now on the women's side, we have Chris Statlander entering at number 1. And on Dynamite this Wednesday, there will be a 4-way to decide who enters at number 2 between Tekla, Ty Mello, Queen Aminata, and Megan Bayne. Tekla and Bayne have been on the same team twice now. They've run these all-star women's 8-person tag team matches. So lazy. They ran the same match on Collision twice in the last 2 weeks, only they replaced Penelope Ford with Julia Hart in the one that aired last night. Here, Tekla and Bayne, they will be adversaries. I think Tekla wins this. She enters at number 2. There are a few ex-WWE names recently released. I don't know that their 90 days would allow them to appear here. I don't know the timeline here on like a Shayna Baszler or a Dakota Kai. Offhand, I don't remember how long ago they were released, if their 90 days are up yet or not. It's possible their 90 days are not up. If they are, then I would expect to see probably one of them pop up here. I know there's been reports that AEW has an interest in Isla Dawn. Isla Dawn could be in there because she was released a lot earlier than that. I think she may have been released late last year. So I could see, at least one of those names popping up in here. I hope Athena gets into this because it may be her only chance of getting on the card. I'm going with Megan Bayne to win the Gauntlet. I would say that if Toni Storm retains her title, Megan Bayne wins. If Mercedes wins the title, I would pick Willow Nightingale to win. But I'm going to go with Megan Bayne as the winner of the Women's Gauntlet. We have Adam Cole, the Collision Kid. He'll be defending his TNT Championship against Kyle Fletcher, who beat Daniel Garcia last night on Collision to earn the shot. This is a rematch from the Dynamite after Double or Nothing, which is the match where Fletcher gave Cole that sickening powerbomb on the apron, which supposedly got him heat backstage with some people. It was very, very stupid. But this should be Fletcher's time. Kyle Fletcher will leave Texas as the new TNT champion. The title has never felt less important than it does right now. And I don't want to just lay that all on, Adam Cole or any one person. It's been that way for a while. Honestly, it goes back to when Jack Perry had the belt. And it got worse when Daniel Garcia won it, and it has not gotten much better with Adam Cole. They have done a good job of making something out of Kyle Fletcher. I think it is time to bring the gold home to the Callis family and just try to restore that TNT title to some semblance of what it was before. It just does not feel as important as it used to. The Hurt Syndicate, Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin, they will defend the AEW Tag Team titles against Speedball Mike Bailey and Kevin Knight, the team of Jet Speed, as well as the Patriarchy. Christian Cage and Nick Wayne have been added to this match. It's been a very odd build to this match. The challengers in the form of Jet Speed have been destroyed by the Hurt Syndicate at every turn, at least on Collision last night in that triple threat match. It was Shelton Benjamin, Kevin Knight, and Nick Wayne. They actually gave the win to Kevin Knight, and he pinned Shelton to do it, but it's almost like too little too late. I mean, they have just been destroyed at every turn. The story is that they're scrappy. They're the scrappy underdogs that just will never die. They don't know how to say, I quit. They keep coming back. Thank you, sir. May I have another? But it has done very little to make me see them as credible challengers for the titles. Every week, it seems like MVP is on the microphone begging, literally begging, other teams to step up, come out, challenge us. And outside of these two guys, nobody ever does. So there was talk of adding Christian and Nick Wayne to the match, and now they have done so. Now they've made it official. Christian and MVP, I know they had an interaction on Collision recently. An MVP warned Christian that they wouldn't be losing their titles to the Patriarchy. You know, FTR beat the Outrunners on Collision last night. They have no match for Saturday. So I thought, if anything, if you're going to add more teams to this, you make it a four-way and you add FTR, because there's a story that you could work into this if you would have added FTR to the match. Now, I'm still picking Lashley and Benjamin to retain, no matter what. I think that the Hurt Syndicate will walk out with those tag team titles. But, you know, you have one team that causes the other to lose. We could have gotten an FTR beatdown on Christian and Nick Wayne after the match, and that could be where you have the return of Adam Copeland. You know, and he comes out more so to go after FTR for injuring him than to make the save for Christian. But we get that moment between Cope and Christian where they exchange looks. And you now have 2 months to tell that story of them reuniting and agreeing to work together to wrestle FTR in Toronto at All Out. That's how you could have started to connect those dots. So, look, it's always possible they could throw FTR in there this week. We have another week of television left. And FTR, like I said, they have no match, even though they got a win on Collision last night. But that's how I would do it. You already added one more team. What the fuck? Add one more, and then you could start to connect the dots for that story down the road. But I'm going with the Hurt Syndicate to retain their titles. I just don't see Christian and Nick Wayne, you know, being together long enough where that would even make sense. Jet Speed, they could put the titles on them in a triple threat here without having Benjamin and Lashley lose. Maybe that's why they're adding Christian and Nick Wayne. You know, maybe Nick Wayne is in there to take the fucking loss so that the Hurt Syndicate doesn't have to eat the pin and you could get the titles off of them. That's the thing about doing a multi-team match, because I just don't see anybody really being credible in this situation, credible enough to beat the Hurt Syndicate, but that's how you could do it. Kind of a cheap way out of it, but you put them in a multi-person match and they can lose without losing, right? I just don't see them losing. I just don't. Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay against the Young Bucks. If the Bucks lose, they are stripped of their EVP titles. But if they win, Swerve nor Ospreay can challenge for the AEW World Championship for an entire year. I'm glad they added that last bit on Wednesday because the Bucks had no reason otherwise to put their EVP powers on the line unless they were getting something in return. And if you think about it, they're not even really getting anything in return. But I guess to them, it's worth it just to fuck with the other two that they won't be able to challenge for the world title. I don't know why they would even care. I thought the play here was going to be Swerve and Hangman. I think a lot of people thought that, you know, in the weeks leading up to where we are now. Swerve and Hangman. Ospreay wins the Owen. He's the one that tries to beat Jon Moxley to win the world title. But you have the story of Swerve and Hangman here for the sake of the company. Forced to put their differences aside and come together to face a common enemy. And really playing up the drama as well with Hangman and the Elite. Whose side is he going to be on, right? Going into All In. The story was there if they wanted to tell it. And maybe it was, and Tony decided very late on who he wanted to win the Owen. We heard that story going around about Ospreay. It might have been a Fightful report about Ospreay and Hangman. They were both lobbying for the other to win. It sounded like it might not have been decided upon as late as the weekend of the show who was going to go over in that tournament. But whatever the case, I actually think the Bucks are winning here, especially if Hangman is winning the title. I don't think it's going to be all good news for the babyfaces on this show. I wish it wasn't so. I think the EVP stuff is way overdone in everything the Bucks do on TV, and it's a risk to keep two of your top babyfaces out of the world title picture for a year, but it can be done with the right story. I don't think adding that stipulation makes the outcome as predictable as some people may think it is. It's not like they're putting their careers on the line or something dumb like that. If the babyfaces lose here, Will Ospreay cannot challenge for the title for an entire year. If we assume that they are going to bring All In, and Tony Khan has said they're going back to Wembley next year, but if we assume that All In is going back to Wembley in August of next year and not July, and frankly, even if it was July, right, that would be a year, he could still be in the Owen Hart tournament and win, because if he wins, the actual title match would not take place until after the 1 year is up. So the story there is Will Ospreay finally gets the chance after a year of having to wait to challenge for the championship and win the championship in his home country of England, right? That would be the story there. But then we have an entire year of Ospreay doing what exactly, right? That's my concern. It's even worse for Swerve, who, as a babyface, if he isn't fighting for the world title, if he doesn't have that singular goal in mind, I don't know what he's fighting for. It was Ospreay who suggested the stipulation. Swerve clearly was not happy about this, but he reluctantly agreed. I think Ospreay is losing this match for his team, and that's the catalyst for a Swerve heel turn. Swerve needs that edge back, especially if they're losing this match and he can't fight for the top title. He'll blame Ospreay for the loss and make him pay, and then we get a third match between them, and maybe even a fourth. You can milk a feud between them for a few months. I doubt that Hangman, if he wins the title, even holds it for a year. But if he does, there's always the inevitable Hangman Swerve title match that they could do. But again, that would be much later on. So it's a risk. It's a risk taking your two, or I should say two of your top baby faces, because Hangman's right there with them. It's a risk taking two of your top baby faces and kind of boxing yourself in this way, but I think that's what's going to happen. I got the Young Bucks winning this. Timeless Toni Storm defends the AEW Women's World Championship against the undefeated CEO, the TBS champion Mercedes Mone. They had a chance to take the TBS title off of Mercedes on Dynamite this week against Mina Shirakawa. They didn't take it. Now she rolls into this pay-per-view as TBS champion, and if she wins the world title, then what? Does she defend both titles? Does she suffer her first loss defending the TBS title? That wouldn't make much sense. Neither would her vacating the TBS title. She's made it this far. They probably want her to set the record as the longest reigning TBS champion of all time and erase Jade Cargill's name from that spot. The way things have played out on TV, Mercedes has gotten one over on Toni a few times now. They're going to have a face-to-face, one final face-to-face on Dynamite this week, and so maybe Toni will stand tall there. But Mercedes has gotten one over on her a couple of times. Left her laying again on Wednesday. Another Mercedes win here may be good for the Mercedes brand. What it wouldn't be so good for is the AEW women's division. I picked Megan Bayne to win the Gauntlet because I think Toni Storm is retaining the title. I think she hands Mercedes her first taste of defeat. And before she ever lays a hand on that world title, she needs to first drop that TBS title. If she wins the world title and lets the other one go, she's not losing for a long time yet. So what is accomplished by keeping this woman undefeated for 2 years? You know, she's been plowing through everybody. You really think if she wins the world title next weekend that she's going to turn around and lose it in 2 months? It's like we're resetting the clock all over again. Mercedes has had a great run in terms of the actual matches that she's had. She rarely misses. Toni Storm has been consistently one of the best performers in the entire business. Her commitment to that character and the work that she has done has been fantastic. These two are going to have an all-timer on Saturday. It could be the greatest women's match this company has ever seen. And when it is over, I predict that Toni Storm will still be the AEW Women's World Champion. Kenny Omega. He returned on Dynamite to rescue Kota Ibushi from a beatdown at the hands and feet of the Don Callis family. On Saturday, Omega defends his AEW International title against the Continental Champion, Kazuchika Okada. Winner take all. No more international title, no more Continental title, just one unified champion. People make the Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat comparison for a reason with these two, because you will not find a better series of matches between two people of this quality, of this caliber, in this generation. Their Wrestle Kingdom 11 match was an absolute classic. Their 60-minute Broadway at Dominion a few months later, absolute classic. Their G1 match 2 months after that, another classic. And they did it in half the time. And then Dominion in 2018, best 2 out of 3 falls, maybe the greatest match that I've ever seen. 65 minutes long, and I was never bored. That's a high bar to set. How do you top that? How do you top that series of matches? I don't think you go into this with that mentality, especially if you're Kenny and you just had a near-death experience with diverticulitis. He just sounds grateful for every day that he can wake up and just wrestle, because he thought he might never have that chance again. And after more than a year off, he came back and had the match that he had with Gabe Kidd at the Tokyo Dome. His first match back. And it was like he never left. Now he finally gets the big match with Okada on American soil, on one of the biggest AEW shows of all time. You don't think these two aren't going to go out there and tear down the house? You don't think that we're going to see New Japan Okada out there? In most of his matches, it looks like he's just coasting, because he doesn't have to put his body through the kind of abuse that he used to, right? Not when he has 11 minutes on TV with commercials, right? It's different now. It's a different style. It's a different company. It's a little bit older. He made his money. But here he's on pay-per-view with no less than 30 minutes, I'm sure, probably much more, to have a classic Okada match. They usually start very slow and then they build, they tell a story. And by the end of it, especially that closing sequence, they've got that crowd in the palm of their hand. You're going to get the holy shit chants before they even touch, before the bell even rings. It's like when Okada and Bryan Danielson finally wrestle, right? This is going to be special. You know that going in. This is the match that Tony Khan had in mind the minute he signed Okada to a contract. He couldn't do the match sooner because Kenny was hurt. But now we get to see it, possibly for the last time. You never know. And it's the match that I am most looking forward to on this show. A main event on any show. The only reason it doesn't get the closing spot on this show is if Hangman Page is winning the world title. But it is a main event anywhere in the world. And I predict that Kenny Omega will walk out the new AEW Unified Champion. Now, Okada is not undefeated in AEW. He lost once to Bryan Danielson. He lost to Kyle Fletcher in a Continental Classic match. I think those are his only 2 singles losses. On the whole, he has been very well protected, and he has won most of his matches. And he's had that Continental title now for a long time. This is where it all comes to an end, though. And speaking of coming to an end, we can all hope. Clasp your hands together, everybody, because it's finally here. The main event, Jon Moxley. After 9 painful months, not even childbirth is as painful as this Death Rider stuff has been. But here we are at last in Texas. He defends the AEW World Championship against the winner of the Owen Hart tournament, the former AEW World Champion, the man that we are counting on to be the savior, Hangman Adam Page. And it will be a Texas death match. This will not be their first match together. It will not even be their first Texas death match together. Hangman won their first one at Revolution in 2023. Hangman all but said on Wednesday, he knows the Death Riders are going to get involved. He knows the Young Bucks will be sneaking around. So let's just make it Texas Death. I like that they're openly acknowledging what we already know. There's going to be a metric fuck ton of interference in this match. It will be overbooked to all hell. And that could be a lot of fun if we get the right outcome. This will be their Avengers Endgame. The Death Riders have screwed over so many people. They have injured so many people, going all the way back to Bryan Danielson when Moxley won the world title. Bryan Danielson took a bump a few weeks ago at Arena Mexico when he delivered a Busaiku knee at the Ring of Honor taping. That was after the show. I fully expect to see him here, if only for one quick cameo to wipe out Wheeler Yuta, that little shit, with the same knee that Yuta's been using ever since. Moxley beat Orange Cassidy at Full Gear. He beat Hangman and two other men in a four-way at World's End. Adam Copeland, Swerve Strickland, Samoa Joe, and don't forget, throwing Darby Allin down a flight of stairs. He hasn't been seen since. He actually made it to the summit of Mount Everest. He flew the flag, literally, of AEW on top of the mountain. Something they never even acknowledged on television. Why? Because they wanted to keep him out of sight, out of mind, for this moment when Darby returns to help put the nail in the coffin of Jon Moxley's reign as world champion. And we might even get a Sting cameo, too. I'm sure he'll be there. He lives in Texas. I don't know why he wouldn't drop by. There's been a lot of talk about Tony Khan maybe wanting to wait to put the title on Darby. Maybe Moxley even wins this match to save the title win for Darby in Toronto at All Out, or Wrestle Dream in October if they go back to Seattle. Another 3 or 4 months of this Death Rider shit is unacceptable. If Tony Khan wanted Darby to be the one to dethrone Jon Moxley, you don't push those plans back just because Darby wanted to go play Mountaineer. He probably would have been champion by now had he not left. That was his choice. If that's what he wants to do, go ahead. Life goes on, though. These stories, they go on. AEW goes on. You don't put shit on hold to wait for Darby to come back from his expedition. This stage right here is set for a grand finale here and now in Texas. Tony Khan has given us a lot of groan endings to these pay-per-views. These usually great pay-per-views otherwise. Multiple times now. I would hope to build to the happy ending here on this show. I don't think he wants to send people home disappointed this time from his big stadium show. I really don't. You're going to see Darby. You're probably going to see Danielson, the Death Riders, the Bucks, the Ops, maybe Swerve and Ospreay. It's going to be overbooked chaos. And I love it so long as we get Hangman Adam Page at the end of all of it as the new AEW World Champion. I am predicting a win for the Cowboy in Texas. This is Hangman's redemption arc. After all the twists and turns with his character from babyface to psychotic heel and back to whatever he's supposed to be now, the feud with Swerve, it had to happen to lead to this moment. Anything else would be an epic failure.